climbed into Harold's car and found a tube of personal lubricant in the glove compartment. I didn't say a word. I just replaced it with industrial superglue. What happened next forced our neighbors to call the fire department. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching, hit like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to see how far this story travels. The garage felt chilly that night. The concrete floor bit through the soles of my slippers. Harold's old SUV still carried the scent of gasoline mixed with leather polish. A shiver ran up my spine as my fingers brushed the slick tube in the glove compartment. I pulled it out and studied it under the pale flashlight glow. I nearly dropped it. That kind of thing had no place in a marriage gone dry for years. My hand shook as I unscrewed the cap and poured in the glue. The clear liquid slid in smoothly, as if it belonged. I pressed the cap back on and placed the tube where I'd found it. Calmness settled over me, anger hardening into resolve. I closed the car door quietly, careful not to rattle it. Mrs. Miller's porch light flicked on in the cul-de-sac, as if she sensed trouble stirring. I slipped back inside past the photographs lining the hallway. Dust had settled on the family frame from Jack's high school graduation. Harold's arm around me in that picture looked more like a performance than a memory. When Harold came home later, I waited in the kitchen. The wall clock ticked like a metronome of accusation. He pushed through the door with a rehearsed sigh, his tie hanging loose around his neck. His cologne, the expensive one I'd given him one Christmas, still lingered. But now it carried a sweeter, floral note, not foreign, familiar, the kind that made you pause because you'd encountered it before. Maybe in a hug at Thanksgiving dinner, maybe when someone leaned close to help clear the table, but I couldn't place it. He kissed my cheek with cold lips and muttered, "Tough meeting, I'm exhausted." He staggered into the living room, dropped his jacket on the sofa, and collapsed onto the bed without changing. Within minutes, his snores filled the house. Once, that sound had brought comfort. Tonight, it mocked me. I tidied the mess he left, lifting his jacket to hang it and slipping his phone onto the counter. That's when it lit up. A new email glowed in the dark like a flare. I frowned. Harold had always said he hated email. "Too complicated, Eleanor," he used to chuckle. "I'd rather just call." But curiosity and fear made me swipe the screen. The message was short. "You were incredible tonight, Dad," with a heart emoji. My breath caught. The word Dad burned into me like a brand. Who would write that? Not Jack, not anyone who should. And the heart? It was a lover's mark. My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter, staring until my vision blurred. I set the phone down with shaking hands. My pulse thundered, yet the house stayed silent, thick with Harold's cologne and that alien sweetness. I moved like a ghost, gathering his clothes for the wash. In his trouser pocket, I found a receipt. A steakhouse down on Commencement Bay, dinner for two. Cabernet Sauvignon. The wine he'd poured for me when we celebrated opening the bakery years ago. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the receipt, then the email. My hands trembled so badly the images blurred. I studied them, retaking and saving. Every detail mattered. Glancing toward the bedroom, I saw Harold sprawled on the mattress, one arm hanging, his face peaceful, almost innocent. But innocence was gone. The pieces pointed in one direction. My husband was not only unfaithful, he was careless enough to let me see it. I sat alone at the kitchen table, the old clock ticking like a countdown to collapse. The smell of cinnamon rolls from the bakery clung to my sweater, reminding me of the life I'd built. A life Harold seemed eager to discard. I lifted the receipt again, reading the date, time, and signature. Not mine. My chest tightened. 40 years of marriage, and he couldn't even cover his tracks. The night stretched on, chill seeping through the windows. My fingers traced the rim of my coffee mug as I whispered into the silence, "This is just the beginning." I reread Harold's email under the low kitchen light, the refrigerator's hum filling the quiet like static. My thumb hovered over the screen as if it might burn me. I could pretend it was a prank, a wrong address, anything but the truth. Yet the sweetness of that unfamiliar perfume clung to his jacket on the chair, curling into my throat. It was a scent I'd smelled before in my home, as intimate as the groove on Harold's pillow. I set the phone down face down and made coffee I didn't need. Tacoma's drizzle stitched silver lines outside the back window beneath the porch light. Across the cul-de-sac, Mrs. Miller's TV flickered blue against her curtains. Harold's snores rolled down the hallway, a metronome of indifference. I poured the coffee into a paper cup, the kind I hand to customers every morning, and took a sip I barely tasted. The clock ticked. The subject line throbbed in my mind. By morning, the receipt I'd photographed dinner for two by Commencement Bay felt like a bruise. I tucked a scarf around my neck and walked across the cul-de-sac. Mrs. Miller's wind chimes whispered as I knocked. She opened in a cardigan and wool socks, her eyes soft, the way you look at someone shivering from within. "Eleanor," she said, stepping aside. The living room smelled like laundry detergent and cinnamon candles. Her cat blinked at me from the sofa arm. "I need a number," I said. The words scraped my throat. "A private investigator, the one you mentioned." Her knitting needles paused mid-air. She studied my face, then nodded, not asking more. "His name is Harris. Good head, quiet mouth." She wrote the number on a grocery list and pressed it into my palm like a hand warmer. "Call me if you need anything," she added, which, in neighbor language, meant she'd keep her porch light on and questions off. I walked home past the mailbox, their flags down. In hours, circulars and charity newsletters piled up behind a coupon for Sunday roast at the supermarket. I took nothing out. I didn't want to disturb the still life my world had become. At noon, I called Harris from the alley behind my bakery, where yeast met the tang of rain. He answered on the second ring. His voice sounded like gravel. "Mrs. Eleanor, Miller gave me your number." I told him the bare facts, the email line, the receipt, the perfume. I didn't say Harold's name first. It would make the facts heavier. "I need the truth," I said. "All of it." "Meet me at the Anchor," he said. 2:00, back booth. The Anchor sat a block from the water, a narrow cafe with cloudy windows and a chalkboard promising fresh cornbread and coffee to go. Sailboat photos leaned crookedly on the walls. I arrived early and kept my coat on. Harris showed up in a navy jacket and work boots, a leather notebook under his arm. "You brought anything?" he asked, sliding into the booth. I pulled the phone from my purse. "I took pictures," I said. "And there's more. His jacket, the scent on it." He didn't flinch, only nodded. "Details matter." He opened his notebook. "Tell me everything from the moment something felt wrong." The words came steadier than expected. The phone's glow on the counter, the heart emoji. The wine was not for me. Harold's exhaustion looked rehearsed. Harris didn't interrupt. He asked for times, locations, and the make of Harold's SUV. When the waitress came, he ordered black coffee and cornbread, but didn't touch either. "I'll start tonight," he said when I finished. "Discretion is what you pay for." "Your phone will buzz when I have something." I stared past him at the rain-streaked window. Outside, a father in a mariner's cap hoisted a toddler and pointed at a gull. Something ordinary. I had dreamed of such moments, building my days at the bakery around them. Apple pies cooling, flan trembling, neighbors taking coffee to Little League. I pressed my palms together to steady them. That evening, Harold came home early. He hung his jacket on the chair and kissed the air near my cheek. "Big week," he said, loosening his tie. "Complicated papers coming through. You should look them over, Elle, just to make sure the I's are dotted." Once I'd felt flattered. Now it sounded like bait. The floral perfume rode the air again, stronger in the warm kitchen. It wrapped my senses, maddeningly familiar. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Sundays, a hug goodbye at the door, a lipstick stain once on a napkin I'd washed and ignored. The memory hovered just out of reach. My stomach tightened. He ate leftover Sunday roast from the microwave and scrolled through the news. I wiped the counter until it shone. His shirt hem lifted when he stretched, revealing a wine-red smear on his belt. A faint smudge like candle-lit Cabernet. Carelessness was a confession. After he went to bed with a yawn, I lifted the jacket and pressed my face to the wool. The floral note bloomed, soft, expensive, intimate. Not mine. Not a stranger's. A family scent. The kind you noticed when someone leaned over your sink or brushed your shoulder in a photo. I set the jacket down carefully, like a live wire. I called Harris from the laundry room while the dryer rumbled like thunder. "It's familiar," I said. "The perfume. It's someone who belongs here." He paused. "I'm on the move," he said. "I'll circle back." The hours between 10 and midnight stretched like rubber. I sat at the table with cold coffee in a paper cup, folding and unfolding a grocery circular. I wrote down the wine from the receipt, Cabernet Sauvignon, and the timestamp. I listed what I knew and suspected. Beneath it in block letters, "Don't break. Find out." The house made night noises, heater clicking. I ran a finger over the table's groove from years of elbows. My throat ached. I thought of Jack on a late shift, sirens rising, boots pounding, his face steady when saving others. I wanted to call him and ask what to do when the fire was in your kitchen, the smoke was invisible, and the alarm was only in your chest. But I wouldn't burden him with what he couldn't unsee. My phone vibrated against the wood past midnight, too loud in the quiet. A text from an unknown number. Harris. No words, just an image. I tapped it open, breath held. It was Harold and Patricia, side by side, smiling like lovers. Harris's video showed Harold leaning in, kissing Patricia on a hotel balcony. My son's wife. The clip arrived late, after I'd scrubbed the bakery counters. The bell above the door had gone silent, ovens exhaling their last heat. I sat at a flour-dusted table with the laptop, black coffee cooling beside me. Tacoma's rain tapped insistently against the panes. I pressed play. The shaky frame showed the third-floor balcony. Harold stepped out with Patricia, her hair loose, dress clinging in the wind. He wrapped his arm around her waist with tenderness absent from our marriage for decades. She leaned in. Then the kiss, brief, deliberate, sealing every suspicion. My stomach turned to stone. Patricia, Jack's wife, mother of grandchildren I'd dreamed of. My knees pressed the table until it rattled. I replayed it frame by frame until my eyes burned. Not a mistake. Betrayal in purest form. Minutes later, an audio file buzzed in. I slid on headphones with shaking hands. At first, parking lot noise, doors slamming, footsteps. Then Patricia's voice was sharp and impatient. "Dad, hurry with those fake contracts. I want the whole chain. I want that old hag out of the house." A pause, then Harold's voice, steady, confident, the man I'd trusted. "Don't worry. Eleanor doesn't know a thing. Leave it to me. She trusts me too much." I ripped off the headphones like they burned. My bakery. My house. My life. They wanted everything. I pressed palms into the table, flour smearing, feeling denial crack. The next morning, I carried a thick envelope into the bedroom. Harold had left for another meeting. Sunlight slanted through blinds, striping the room. I spread contents across the bedspread, printed photos, screenshots, video stills, and recording transcripts. I labeled each with dates and times, handwriting precise. An old family album lay open. Jack's wedding day stared back. Jack and Patricia cutting cake, Harold grinning, me holding a bouquet. I slid a balcony kiss, still into the sleeve beside it. Dust clung to my fingertips. 40 years, reduced to evidence. I sealed the envelope and hid it beneath albums, where dust and memory guarded it. My hands lingered on the wedding album cover. I whispered, "Jack, I'm so sorry." That evening, Harold came home whistling, cologne heavy and desperate. He kissed the air near my cheek and poured wine, humming as he flipped mail. His cheer was a thin mask. I let him wear it. He didn't notice my eyes measuring him. "Long day?" he asked casually. I stirred the stew on the stove, back to him. "Busy," I said. My voice was flat. Inside, something cold grew, unmeltable by words or false affection. I sat at the kitchen table after Harold's snores filled the house. The wall clock ticked above. Beside my elbow, the evidence lay sealed. The house creaked, the heater clicked, and the rain whispered on the roof. I stared at the envelope. Proof of fears and more. If they wanted fire, I'd give them fire. I dressed carefully the next morning in ordinary clothes for movement. I left the envelope on the bed where Harold would find it. Then I drove to the courthouse, asking about lawyer paperwork. How long, what was needed, and what was public. The clerk's bland smile, stack of forms, heavy pen. Mundane details that mattered now. Back home, I crept quietly, ensuring nothing obvious. I opened drawers and boxes, slipping a damning photocopy into a plain envelope marked Miss. Another was in my purse for quick reach. That evening, when Harold asked me to review complicated papers, I pretended to read, heart hammering, face calm. I scanned for names, dates, and signatures showing their plan, references to transfer, notary, and dates matching Harris's receipts. All there, legal looking, waiting. When he set the stack down, he smiled in a way that once meant something. "You always catch the little things," he said. I smiled back. "Someone has to dot the I's." He didn't know I'd already dotted them with evidence, photos, quiet machinery making truth undeniable. That night, I slept with one eye open, not paranoia, but purpose. Betrayal exposed. The rest was about choices. Mine, theirs, my son's. When Jack walked in the next day for an early shift, ordinariness hit like a slap. He kissed my cheek, smoke and engine oil clinging to his jacket. He whistled, reaching for fresh croissants. For a moment, I almost believed in simple things. Then I remembered the balcony, contract drumming truth under everything. I folded my hands and waited, while Harold snored beside me that night. I stared at his car keys on the nightstand. My hands trembled, but from resolve, not fear. Moonlight cut the room in thin bands, glinting on the metal. I lay still, counting seconds between snores until I was sure he slept profoundly. Then I slid the keys into my palm. The hallway creaked under my steps. Photographs. Jack's childhood, our dusty anniversary, watched as I passed. In the garage, the SUV waited, hood still warm. Gasoline and damp concrete stung my nose. I opened the glove compartment. As I'd left it, the tube remained, label hiding the glue inside. I pressed it gently, testing the weight. Silent justice. I returned it, adjusting the map and napkins so Harold wouldn't suspect. I sat in the driver's seat, breath fogging the glass. I thought first of Jack driving this SUV, laughing at its clunk compared to a fire truck. of Patricia hugging him goodbye before shifts. Now, poisoned memories. I gripped the wheel, then slipped back inside. In the bedroom, Harold shifted but didn't wake. I moved the bookshelf near the headboard. The wedding photo of Jack and Patricia smiled through the dust. Behind it, I taped the small recorder bought for Jack's college lecturers. I checked the battery, switched to continuous record, and adjusted the frame to hide the light. The microphone pointed toward the bed. Whatever words they spoke here would not stay secret. I sat on the bed edge, staring at Harold's shadowed profile. How often had I seen this as my anchor? Now a stranger's mask. I lay back, eyes open long after his snores resumed, memorizing ceiling cracks until dawn bled through blinds. After closing the bakery, I set the last plan the following evening. Pulling the old skillet from the cabinet, the kitchen smelled of cinnamon and yeast. I filled it with oil, placed it on the stove, and tied a thin cord from the igniter to the window latch. A tug from outside would spark flame, billow smoke, and panic neighbors. It wouldn't take much. The watch group thrived on barking dogs and lingering lights in our cul-de-sac. Smoke would bring them running. I tested once. String twist sparked the burner, smoke spiraled, curling against the ceiling. I coughed, waved it out, shut off. Air carried an acrid bite. Perfect. I reset, tied the cord, and left the window cracked for a string slip. Wiping my hands, I glanced at my wrist. The silver bracelet from our 25th anniversary caught the light. Once a loyalty symbol. Now, a reminder of straying. I twisted it until it pinched, then let it fall. It stayed as armor, not love. I stood at the kitchen window with reheated coffee, watching the empty cul-de-sac. Rain stopped, pavement slick with porch light reflections. Crossed, Mrs. Miller's curtains glowed softly. I wondered if she sensed the storm. Harold shuffled in, yawning. "You're still up," he muttered. "Couldn't sleep," I said, turning the mug. He patted my shoulder lightly, meaninglessly. "Don't stay up too late." He returned to bed, leaving cologne and clinging sweetness twisting my stomach. I didn't answer. When snores resumed, I slipped out the back and crossed to Mrs. Miller's porch. She answered in a robe, surprise on her face. "Eleanor? What on earth?" "Amy," I whispered. "I need to watch my house from here." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her living room was warm with the Sunday roast smell, TV murmuring. She offered a chair by the window. From there, I had a clear view of my front door. I sipped the coffee she pressed into my hand, the mug hot against my palms. Harold's SUV sat quietly in the street, the glove compartment holding a secret that bound them tighter than vows. My kitchen window glimmered, cord invisible in the dark. I steadied my breath and whispered, "Let them come." From Mrs. Miller's window, I watched Patricia step from a taxi, sunglasses hiding nothing. Harold opened the door to welcome his lover home. My pulse quickened, the sight obscene in normality. Patricia with a tote bag, Harold ushering her in routinely. They thought it was safe. They thought my absence was freedom. I gripped the mug, coffee cold, leaned closer. Through the earpiece to the recorder, voices came alive. Laughter, glasses clinking. Harold's deep and smug, finally no hiding. Patricia's giggle, cruel. The old woman's gone. "This is our house." My fingers tightened around the mug as I feared it would shatter. 3 minutes later, the sound I'd waited for came, a creak in the bed, Patricia's cry. "What the hell? I can't move." Panic crackled, humiliating. Harold's growl. "Shut up, stay still." I closed my eyes, drew breath. Now. I pulled the cord to the stove. Across the street, flame flicked. Smoke curled black, heavy, seeping out the window, twisting into the night. Shouts rang from the cul-de-sac. "Smoke! Eleanor's house is on fire. Neighbors poured out, pointing, calling. Mrs. Miller's hand went to her mouth, but she stayed silent. She touched my arm, eyes wide with understanding. Someone dialed 911. Sirens wailed within minutes. Red lights strobed wet pavement. Fire trucks screeched to a halt, Jack jumping down in gear, helmet glinting. My son, face taut, unaware of nightmare inside. "Get gear, break down the door," Jack shouted, command clear. Crew obeyed, axes splintering the front door. Neighbors pressed, phones raised, whispers buzzing. From the earpiece, Patricia's wails were ragged. "Harold, do something." Harold, desperate. "Quiet! Don't let them in!" I clenched the armrest as Jack surged inside. Extinguishers hissed, boots pounded, shouts echoed kitchen, driving me to the edge of tears. Then Jack's voice, breaking. "What is this?" Silence. Then crew exclamations. "Oh God, they're stuck!" Rookie laugh silenced by Jack's roar. "Quiet! Respect!" Humiliation hung heavy. My son, neighbors, team saw what I'd carried alone. Father and daughter-in-law were exposed degradingly. Firefighters worked fast, covering with sheets, prying loose. Neighbors clustered, voices rising in shock, disgust. It's Harold and Patricia. His own daughter-in-law, phones recorded, lights flashed, laughter mixed with outrage. From my vantage, I saw them carried out, Harold pale, Patricia sobbing, wrapped but shame-bare. Patricia buried her head. "Don't let them see," Harold muttered. "Get back, Jack, don't look." Too late. Cul-de-sac had seen. Scandal was no longer private. The neighborhoods and the world's. I looked at Jack, frozen in the driveway, arms heavy, helmet on. His hollow, emptied of family certainties. The man he admired, the woman he trusted, shattered. My chest ached with guilt, relief. I had wanted him to see the truth, but not like this. Yet there he stood, betrayed cruelly. Mrs. Miller shifted, phone raised, recorded silently, face grim, glanced at me. It had to be done. The ambulance arrived, siren howling. Harold and Patricia were loaded, still stuck under sheets. Cries carried into the night. The crowd murmured, "Disgraceful." Fire truck lights bathed the street red as vehicles pulled away. Smoke curled faintly from the kitchen, dissipating into the damp Washington night. Jack stood motionless, staring at the broken door. Crew avoided eyes, gathering tools silently. Neighbors lingered, whispering. From the window I saw, son's trembling hands, slack jaw, world tilted. Pressed empty mug to lips, whispered words for him. "Now you know, my son." At the hospital, I placed a tube of mustard disguised as ointment beside Harold's bed. His eyes widened, but I only smiled. The room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. Patricia lay on the other bed, hair tangled, face streaked. She wouldn't look. Harold tried, lips cracked, eyes frantic, but I stayed calm. 40 years led to this room, shame thicker than disinfectant. The nurse thanked me for the ointment and left. Just us three, silence heavy. Harold reached, hand trembling. "Eleanor, please. I can explain." I pressed the tube on the tray, close enough for him to see a yellow smear. Smile fixed. He paled, understanding. Patricia whimpered, clutching the blanket. Minutes later, a scream tore through the hallway. Patricia's, "It burns skin on fire." Harold cursed, his own cry following. Nurses rushed, alarms sounding. I stepped aside, hands folded, as chaos filled. One nurse glanced, pity softening. Thought I was just a wife, mother-in-law in a cruel spectacle. She was right, in a way. Hours later, I returned with the folder. Jack in the corridor, helmet under arm, eyes hollow. Handed papers wordless, jaw tight. I squeezed his hand and walked inside. Harold sat up, desperate. "Eleanor, don't throw 40 years away." I laid divorce papers on his lap, met eyes. 40 years end here, sign. Then disappear from my life and sons. Patricia gasped, turning to Jack in the doorway. "Honey, mistake, forgive me." Jack's eyes stared, silent, turned, boots striking linoleum like gunshots. Echo vanished, leaving Patricia's sobs. I leaned close to Harold, voice low. "I'm not a rescue machine. I get tired too." He flinched like he was struck, mouth open to plead, but the nurse entered, reminding sharply, "Hospital, keep quiet." I turned away, heart pounding but steady. Jack leaned against the wall, head in hands. I touched his shoulder. He let me hold him for the first time since the fire. Shoulders shook, then straightened, breath ragged. Why him? Why her? No answer. Only mother's embrace. Weeks blurred. Signatures, hearings, gossip. Videos spread, Harold and Patricia on stretchers, neighbors' judgment, laughter. Bakery busier. Customers lined up for flan and apple pies to see the woman who stood her ground. Mrs. Miller came with a knitting bag over her shoulder, handed change for cinnamon rolls. "Proud of you, Eleanor. Don't forget." I nodded, smiling, but new strength felt like stitching glass with bare hands. Jack moved back, filled space as Harold left. We sat across a small table at dinner, sharing the Sunday roast, bread, and coffee. Sometimes he stared at the plate, long, wound deep. One evening, he looked up, faintly smiling. "Flan this weekend?" The request nearly broke me. First ordinary ask, swallowed lump. Yes, but stir caramel. Life returned in fragments. Joined cooking club, women swapping recipes, laughing over coffee. One said, "Eleanor, best apple pie in Tacoma." I laughed, the sound new. Sundays, back pew at church, stained glass warming face. I prayed for Jack and myself, as well as quiet strength. I walked with Mrs. Miller through the square, steps slow, talk easy. She'd shake her head. "They still talk, but say you won." I smiled faintly. Winning was complicated when the prize was survival. The bakery bustled one afternoon. The bell rang non-stop. Cinnamon and yeast wrapped me. Jack's voice from back, confirming the order with the hotel. I watched him, taller, stronger than in the photos on the wall. Own eye nodded slightly. First spark in weeks, healing begun. The counter had old things I'd cleaned, an unsigned birthday card from Harold, a dusty album, and a letter to Jack that had never been given. I handed it to him that evening. He read silently, hugged me, saying more than words. Bakery clock ticked steadily, not accusation, but endurance rhythm. I wiped the counter, straightened the flan, looked at the street shimmering in the afternoon light. They tried taking everything, but I'm still here. When I look back, kitchen silence was louder than sirens. Every sound, ticking clock, dripping faucet, carried betrayal weight. House knew before I did. Walls hold secrets, but strength, too, held me up. Harold thought he could live 2 lives without consequence. Deception stretched without breaking. Patricia hid behind the charm of the daughter-in-law title, but deceit cracked, collapsed. Jack's eyes in the driveway haunt me. Shock, disbelief, grief etched like stone. A son shouldn't watch his father's mask fall. Yet truth was a brutal freedom. No joy in humiliation. Justice was not always victory. It felt like grief, heavy but necessary. Truth breaks before it rebuilds. Days blurred into whispers, headlines, stares. Some neighbors brought casseroles, kindness. Others offered gossip as concern. Jack stood by, silent, steady, carrying pain. At the bakery, strangers became loyal. came for resilience, survival, and cinnamon sugar. Every loaf was a declaration, still here. Nights were harder. I sat where Harold had read a paper, where Patricia had laughed during the holidays. Empty chair whispered absence, but new beginnings too. In the hospital, "I'm not a rescue machine," meant it. Years carrying family, patching cracks, excusing neglect. Love without respect was servitude, finished serving lies. Divorce ended the marriage, gave life back. Patricia's tears were unmoving, not apologies, pleas for undeserved comfort. She chose betrayal, consequences followed. Jack brought healing, unexpected, carried groceries, laughter, silence. Two survivors in the same wreckage. Presence was comfort no court could give. Sunday dinners became a ritual of survival. Roast in the oven, coffee brewing, pie cooling. Honest meals nourished the soul. Honor was not given, it was protected, not traded. Eat saved for yourself at the table, even alone. Once claimed, no betrayal steals it. Families built on trust and survive boundaries. Without them, love becomes a weapon. Without respect, marriage becomes a play. Without truth, a house is just walls. I ache still, but not broken. The ache remained, what I endured and refused. It proved I had loved, unreturned. So I stand, flower on apron, scars on heart, not defined by betrayal or greed, defined by refusal to silence, standing in fire, and walking out whole. When asked about survival, the truth was that I chose myself. Dignity, not revenge. Walking from diminishment, knowing worth, refusing less. Dignity was quiet, powerful. Justice was sometimes not punishment. Sometimes freedom, courage to take back yours. Have you lived through something like this? Share thoughts below. I want to know how far your story travels. If you feel this, type 1 and subscribe to Auntie Tales, because the next story waits for you.